Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
God, it's good to see you.
My God. You don't look a day over 35 years ago. I don't know. I guess it was around 35. Well, I've been here for 32 years or so.
What brought you there? Where were you born here?
What the answer, that's an old joke. What brought me here? The airplane, of course. But that's one of the oldest jokes. in, I just had been interested in Japan since I was a kid, probably. My father was actually in Yokohama after the war.
Oh,
He was like doing traffic, doing everything he could to screw up the traffic in Tokyo, probably. He didn't fight. I mean, he was during the war. He was on Cape Cod, I think. Thank God, because otherwise he wouldn't have survived. But so he brought back stuff from Japan. He brought back these little things, and I don't know. I just I never felt at home in the States. I don't feel at home here either. But
what
and I
planet would
just
you prefer to be on?
exactly. So I gave up. It's like, all right, it doesn't matter where I go. It's always going to be the same thing. So, but I just was always interested in, and and when I taught at Berkeley from '84 to '91.
Oh, wow.
So did you start in '84? I guess you started in '84 too.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Wow. You've been there for what, 40 years? You've been teaching there for 40 years?
Nearly, yeah.
Damn. I did damage only for 7 years. You've been doing damage for 40 years. Woo.
Yeah, that's why I have so many issues. No.
Think of all the lives you've destroyed. I mean, I only had 7 years to destroy lives.
I know. It's like over 10,000 students, and it's like mind-boggling.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
You were probably teaching like I was. I was giving lessons in high school even.
Yeah, that's funny. Sure.
Right.
And from the very first time I started to teach, actually, my senior year at Berkeley, which was 1974, they had a program where they had, I guess, seniors could teach people from the outside who wanted to come in and take some lessons.
Oh, how cool!
So that was interesting.
Where
I
was
still
it?
remember.
Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Boston.
Oh, wow.
I was born in Boston. That's why, my house was like 30 minutes from Berkeley. So, and I used to go see when I was, a kid, like I used to go see their the student concerts and the faculty concerts. And, Herb Pomeroy, he used to teach the MIT jazz band, I guess the MIT jazz big band.
That's right.
Used to go see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had all this great, oh man, it was just so great. So,
but what got you interested in sax to begin with? And all the woodwinds? You play a lot of woodwinds.
Yeah, flute and clarinet too.
Clarinet too.
I don't know. Oh yeah, I own one. I own two of them now, actually. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, who was a sax player, and I asked him the same question: how did you start on this? Why did you choose the sax?
Yeah.
So he said, well, my father had this book of instruments, and with all these pictures. And he said, I opened it up, and I said, the golden snake, right? That's what it was. And he said, yeah, I saw this thing. I said, that one. That's the one I want.
That's great.
But, I played piano for about 3 years when I was a kid, like classical,
Wow.
And I took a year of classical guitar.
Nice.
Well, I don't know about that. I wouldn't go that far, but so I learned how to play. That's all I could do after a year.
That's a lot.
It was fun. It was fun. My cousin played classical guitar, and I just fell in love with the sound of it. And I used to, I still sometimes I listen to Segovia and Julian Bream and
yeah.
I think actually there's another guy. I think his name is John Williams. Actually.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. So and then quit that too. And why did I choose the sax? That's a good question.
Golden snake.
The golden snake. The golden snake. Actually, a friend of mine's father had a massive jazz collection in his basement, and we would go over there and listen to records.
Mm,
Um, and when we weren't doing that, I'd go over to another friend's house, and I would do air drums to the Dave Clark Five.
nice. I love playing drums.
So
Yeah.
it's like, so um,
What's
yeah,
your
I don't know.
what's your favorite kind of music to play, and in what setting? What type of instrumentation around you?
I have no idea. Absolutely, it's too wide. It's
Yeah.
from doing flute and clarinet, I got into classical music, and when I started playing professionally, I mean, I was already doing funk gigs and pop gigs, and I love all of it. Gee, I don't know.
Because sometimes you're
Uh,
in a section and you got to play as one, and sometimes you're standing out as a soloist. And I think
Sure, sure.
you have that broader background that a lot of musicians don't, where they stay in one particular kind of situation. And
Uh,
you've played in all these different situations, and yet
it's
you
true.
know how to shift gears. You know how to be the person they need in that moment, like without an ego, which I think is pretty tremendous.
Me? No
Yes.
ego? Mm,
Well, I mean, you're not an ego that
no, no.
like when you played the solo on
Mm,
Sad Stranger on my song,
mhm, mhm.
you played this beautiful, very David Sanborn musical, this fits like a
Oh,
James Taylor type song,
okay.
beautiful thing. When we
Mhm.
did the record release concert at the Berkeley Performance Center, and a friend in the band quickly grabbed a sax player and said, this guy can stand in since we don't have Bob. Um,
Right, right.
he came into the rehearsal and played the most out Ornette Coleman crazy, all shocking, every crazy
Oh man.
interval and
Ah, yeah.
and it was just he was like having the greatest time. And I'm playing
Wrong.
these really soft James Taylor types chords. You remember the
Ah,
song a little bit. And
man.
he said, well, I'm really known as an out player. And it was like, yeah, you play out like 7 blocks from here. Like,
Right, right. Go out.
keep
Oh
going,
man.
And I was like, I'm sorry, that's not what I need
Ah,
for tomorrow night, So
right, right, right,
and
right.
he said, no, 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 really, I'd love to play the performance center. If you want, I'll transcribe Bob's solo and I'll play it note for note tomorrow night. But that's what he did,
Oh my
because
God.
he was known as an out player. I'm
Out
like,
Blair, yeah.
but I feel like if you're not making a joke and you're really serious about that, do you
Mhm.
really think that fits a James Taylor type song? Like, was that even
Oh
necessary?
Jesus, people people get in, they get this this train line starts and they go, and it's amazing, man. It's like, hey, well, for me, the beginning was like studio. I listened to Phil Woods a lot because he was the guy back then,
Hmm.
and he was playing great jazz. Then he played with a big band, Quincy Jones's big band, and later on he played, Billy Joel's. Well, you're the guy who played Billy Joel's solo. That's all they know about Phil Woods. Yeah,
Right.
well, I've done that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, he was like, that was the thing, a studio guy who can do every style, different things. And I guess, and also in my generation was all big bands. I mean, Berkeley at that time, from morning to night, it was all big bands, and it was such a great way to
Yeah.
learn. So yeah, playing in a section. I love playing lead alto. I love playing solos. I love playing musicals, because
Yeah.
musicals have classical. They have Dixieland, clarinet, anything you can think of, it's in there.
Yeah. And
And
then you get to do all the doubling and tripling and
right,
yeah.
right, exactly. And I just found I also found, actually, what I finally realized was, yeah, I love. Why do you do music? I love music. Yeah, I'm addicted to sound. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the guitar, I love the sound of the guitar. The piano, I didn't have any great love for the sound, but
Really, because I love sitting at my piano and then just being surrounded by all those harmonics and overtones,
ah,
and it just I
ah,
go, oh my God, this thing is huge. It's like driving the
right,
big
right,
bus, my friend said.
yeah, yeah.
compared to a guitar. But the guitar, at
Sure,
least
sure.
if it's acoustic, it's against your body and you feel the
Right, right.
resonance and stuff, and that's pretty
Sure,
nice.
sure.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with woodwinds too, because it's always this is vibrating.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
all
yeah.
the vibration. Yeah,
Oh
that's a huge
wow.
part of it.
Wow.
I've tried to tell people that. I've
And
tried,
that got to be a
and they're
huge
like,
part of the tone.
absolutely. It's
Like it
because
goes through you and back out.
absolutely
Wow.
if you're playing saxophone, you've got it in your mouth, so your whole all it's all vibrating. And what I also realized was when I actually probably was on a teenager when I was at Berkeley too. I got colds all the time. I used to have a cold constantly.
Oh
Um,
no.
so and then when I got a little older and I was again working, I'd get cold. I got so many colds. I got used to playing with a blocked ear, with my ears blocked. And I realized that um, along, when I play, I'm listening to it, but actually even more than that, I'm doing it from the vibration.
Yeah.
And so, everybody, it's like, well, you hear, how do you, the vibration of the thing is the deepest thing, not for me, not the whatever comes in through here. So,
Yeah.
and so each instrument, clarinet has a different thing, flute has a different thing, sax, they're all different. And I just, I just love sound. And I got into saxophone and all of that stuff, not because, man, I'm going to play these hip bebop licks. I don't care about. When I listened to Phil Woods back then, I didn't care what he was playing. I didn't know what he was doing, but his sound was so beautiful that and I've been influenced so much by singers. That's a huge
Mm.
thing for me.
Like
So
who?
LuLu,
Lulu.
LuLu,
She was really good.
she had a thing. She was English, I guess,
Yes.
but she had a thing that I liked, her vibrato and her sound. And people like, I don't know,
That's so cool.
anybody, Aretha Franklin, um, Donny Hathaway, man. Whoa. People
Yeah.
don't know enough about Donny Hathaway. Well, he died fairly young, but um, he's got an album called Extension of a Man. And there's a song on that called Someday We'll All Be Free.
Wow.
And when I heard that song, it was like, that's how I want to play. That's if you've never heard that song, by all means, everybody who's watching this broadcast, Donny Hathaway,
Check
Someday
it out.
We'll All Be Free. And not only that, the accompaniment is this big band. So it's
Wow.
right between what was and what's going to be. And oh
Yeah.
God, his singing is at that time Stevie Wonder and then George Benson came up and all. But Donny Hathaway, oh man.
Wow.
Well,
That's so cool
yeah.
because they say every instrument was invented to imitate the human voice. And then
they used to say that I think it's the trombone is the closest to the human voice. Is that what it was?
I was just wondering
I'm
about
not
that
sure.
because I had heard that the duduk is the Armenian duduk.
I've heard of
And
it. I don't.
it's like we don't really like whining people, but we like whining
Right.
instruments. And if it can cry and whine, we go, wow, that sounds like a person.
It sounds like my sister. But it's funny. Oh,
No, go
speaking
ahead.
of that, singers
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
So that's another funny thing. So here's the story. Sinatra. So the story I heard about Sinatra was that he learned how to sing by listening to, I guess it was Tommy Dorsey, the trombone player. At least he
Wow.
was very much affected by that. So now the next generation, I was affected by listening to people like Sinatra. So
Right.
it's funny, it started from the instrument to the singer and then to the instrument. It's, and Nat
That is
King
interesting.
Cole, I mean, my God.
Yeah.
Nat King Cole, Aretha Franklin, anybody, any of those people, man.
Yeah.
Jesus, I mean, excuse me. Oh, I want to
Incredible.
apologize in advance. I'm probably going to offend somebody. In fact, I'm probably going to offend myself. In fact, I'm pretty sure. So I want to apologize in advance. Sorry about that.
When I was in junior high school, to be in any of the stage band productions or the jazz band, you had to play a concert instrument. So they roped you into playing in the concert band and the marching band. So I had to pick another instrument, couldn't play guitar in those. And I picked flute. And
Okay.
one summer I remember taking home an alto sax because they said, hey, it's the same fingering. I was like, really? So played alto sax for a few weeks and my lip was like, this gigantic swelling from all that resonance and vibrating. It was like, I can't play flute right now.
Yeah.
It just wrecked my embouchure. So that's interesting that you can go back and forth, and it's not a problem.
That's the challenge, though. And if you play musicals,
Really,
you might spend 3 minutes playing this difficult clarinet piece, and then the next thing you have to do is on the flute.
yeah.
That's a challenge, but after a while you get used to it. If you look from the outside at somebody who's doubling, it's like, you're crazy, man. Here's the flute, put it down, now pick up the clarinet, now do this. Now it's insane, but it's just, oh, this is what it is. Okay, so now I do this and now I do this. The guys in New York they play oboe. I struggled with oboe for 2 years, but I gave it up. That's the challenge. And
whole
it's
different thing with the air, right? You need a little bit of air.
Oh God, oboe is all about your air pressure. It's how you use the air. Well, actually, all of them are. And if I get started on that topic, it'll go on forever. But
but it is interesting how when they say Bob Zung, Woodwinds, it's a whole slew of instruments. I guess that happens for guitar players too, because then if they're doing theater, it's banjo, guitar, ukulele, mandolin. Sure. They just go, it's got strings, you can play it, right?
Sure.
I remember when you were working on Sad Stranger with me in 1989, you were the first person that mentioned how challenging it is to have a theater seat, because there are cues in the music and everything that's written down has to be played the same way every single night.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Actually,
there's more room.
There's a few. Okay, let me start offending people now. For me, the goal is never to play it exactly the same way. Here's what happens. Here's the problem. If you have singers that don't sing well, you pretty much have to do it the same way, because if you do anything different, and if you have singers that don't sing well, exactly. And if they don't sing well, if the person who wrote the music understands that, they'll write the melody in one of the parts so that's like a guide for them to sing with.
Oh.
You never hear anybody in the orchestra playing the melody underneath Barbra Streisand. It's not going to happen. She doesn't need that, or Sinatra. So there's that aspect of it. But there's the cue, and there it is, and here we go. But in fact, this, I guess, from a jazz player's point of view, the misunderstanding is, man, why do you want to do that? You got to play the same thing every night?
Yeah.
And it's not that at all. It's I guess, at risk of sounding like I have an ego or I don't care about any of that stuff. It's the craft of, it's a craft of being able to do that kind of thing. So
I would think it's like a consistency and an excitement to play something as ready and mature and as great as you can.
It is.
Because I was in a tribute band for 12 years and 13 tours, and then a bunch of years went by and I was in another tribute band for 4 years, touring all around New England and playing theaters and festivals and things. And everybody knows what's supposed to be in there. Everybody knows the parts, and it's like a pop-up fly. Here comes that Beatle lick everybody's expecting. I got it. Like, if you don't hear it, you can't play it. And some of these songs went by so quickly in the Beatle band that it's a minute 58 seconds. It just hits, and it's like, you've got to be on. You've got to be there. It's got to have energy, and people are going crazy because they love these songs. And it's almost like the Olympics. They're like holding up cards, like 10, you did it. It was great. We loved it. Wow. It was pretty stunning. But why this is so fascinating to me is because a tribute band situation is totally unnatural. Because if I was in any kind of if if the Beatles were out playing, they'd be just playing the songs any way they happen to morph and play that night,
Sure.
but we're trying to imitate a record of a performance that everybody
Right.
knows really
Right.
well. And that's
Sure.
abnormal. It's almost closer to playing a classical piece or playing in a theater situation. And
Sure.
so,
Sure.
did you know Sandy Cott? Was she there? Sandra Cott playing violin at Berkeley when you were there?
No, not
You probably
the
just didn't know.
violin thing.
Yeah.
Well, when I
She
was
just
teaching, Matt Glazer was I guess he was a department chairman.
head
I
guy.
knew him, but that's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I met her because I guess we're on the same floor in the 1140 building at that time. And I got up the nerve to ask her to play a melody on one of my songs called The Garden. And she also played on Baby's Blue. And she came over and she asked me, how would you like me to play this? Because I just had a few bars written down, this little melody. And she played it 14 different ways. It had a different emotion and a different inflection and a whole different meaning each time she played it. And I was like, oh my God, because if you gave those basic notes and melody rhythm to a guitar player, they'd just be ding, 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 ding. That's all it is. And that's all you've got. And that's all that's there because they're not trained the way you guys are, the way horns and woodwinds and string players are trained to play as a section and to be aware of articulation. And that was what always made my ear confused by notating things because I was trying to notate every inflection and I was trying to notate everything that made it Bob versus Sandy versus me.
Right.
And like that's not important. All you need is the basic on and off, and what pitch it is, But Sandy was amazing. She said, sing it to me once. And I sang it to her once. And she played it back exactly how I sang it because her ear was used to hearing that detail. And then even though she was a violinist in the Boston Pops, she just played back exactly what I needed without any kind of argument or, well, I'm known as a rock player or something like that.
That's the gig, that was the gig. So,
and it was awesome. And it was just amazing for a songwriter to get exactly what they needed. Like me as the producer, me as the songwriter, I was so charmed by that and in awe of it.
First of all, as a sax player, if I write something, I already know this should be alto. Oh, now let's do this for tenor. Let's do this for soprano. What happens here is, well, saxophone. So bring them all. Okay, I bring them all. And let's try this. Let's try this. In other words, they wrote this melody without having any idea of how it should be sung on a saxophone.
Right.
No idea of which saxophone is. And man, alto is alto, tenor is a completely different thing for us. So you go in and you play, and I never do any. But the first time I play it, I always just play with nothing else. I just play the notes so they can hear what they wrote.
Oh wow!
And then I start to, you start to, because that's the whole thing. I mean, look, you have the technique. So what? Let's see what you do with the expression.
Yes.
So then you do it, and they go, "Hey, that's good. I like that. Yeah, I made it up, basically." So it sounds good. Which brings me to, if you ever watch master classes, I've seen flute master classes, piano master classes. They're all about not technique. It's all about expression because the students they get, they're already great. They have the technique. That's why they're there. I mean, you're not going to get some world-class piano teacher and have somebody who's like, can't play the instrument. You get people who have auditioned. Okay, I'm going to do this master class. Great. The teacher comes in. The whole thing is about expression. You got the chops. That's not the problem. Over here, you should be thinking about it. And when I started to see a few of these, I thought, man, it's the whole thing. The technique is the technique, but my favorite drummer.
Go ahead. No, favorite drummer.
My favorite drummer is a guy who couldn't even do a roll, but his time and his sound were so great. It was just a ball to play with the guy. You can't do rolls? Well, don't do a roll then, whatever,
Yeah, it was the same with Ringo. Ringo couldn't, they say couldn't do or whatever, but it's not about any of that.
No, no,
It's about playing what's needed in the moment and having enough
exactly.
musician skills to know what that is. But it really has everything to do with your frame of reference, doesn't it? Because if your whole background had nothing to do with popular music, it might
Right.
not be that you have anything that fits anything that I'm writing.
Well, in a way, well, so that alto player that played out, it's
Yeah.
like for him, this is my thing, so this is what I do. Okay, for me, what would you like? Okay, you want me to, this way? Okay, this way.
Yeah.
All right, this way. And there's some situations I've been in where the person who's asking me to do this thing, normally they're really nice because they understand that I'm going to make this thing live. Once in a while, you do something and they go, nah, I don't. And it's like, so I have to, it takes a certain personality to be able to do that too. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying,
Yes.
if you're thin skinned, then it's like, oh man.
Well, the problem is we artists, songwriter types, sometimes don't even know what we want. And so
Exactly.
we're expecting you to interpret it. You're going through 16 different backflips to try to please me. And
Right, right,
I'm going, I'm not sure, I'm not sure. And that's
right.
got to be very frustrating for everybody. You
You
really
know,
should sort of try to imagine something before you start casting people and bringing in the wrong people and then making
you
them feel
know,
bad for not knowing what you want.
it's interesting. It's interesting.
That is an
It,
issue. Yeah.
that's one of those wonderful aspects of music that between the person who wrote the music, the person who's playing it. I mean, it's really it's a great thing. I think. I
Well,
mean,
that's why I think it would be so great if it could just start on equal footing where there's mutual respect and admiration and just love and friendship and food, like food makes everything better. It's like, let's have a visit, let's
right,
eat together, let's hang
right,
out, let's get all our
sure,
needs met, let's feel comfortable. Because
sure,
a lot of times people think I've got two chances and I don't have the gig, or it's so much
oh,
pressure, and then so much
sure, sure,
ego and fear and
sure,
um,
sure,
showing off and
sure, sure.
bravado and walls of like I don't mess with me, and
You got
it's
it.
like,
You got it.
I'm not messing with you, you're already in.
Yeah, yeah,
What can we do to make this song really good, like in your experience, what
sure,
everything with your musicianship, what can
sure.
you think of that would help make this a touchdown? Like, how do we put this over?
Well,
Yeah, that's the work.
that's it. And the my God, the ego thing. I mean, it's such a that's always the problem I had with jazz. I guess is it's
Mm,
so easy to hey man, yeah, whatever, It's okay. Um, I was reading. I read this book. It's called Leonardo on Painting. I read this quite a while ago, but
mm,
um, there's two. Can I mention two books?
please.
Two books. One is that. The other one is Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, but that's a separate story. But they're both kind of the same thing. So
Hmm.
there's a section where Leonardo is talking about he's kind of bugged because it's like there are his contemporaries who are younger, and they're kind of yeah, hey, look at this is cool, and I guess he's pissed off, and he said, this is my interpretation of it anyway. He says, these guys who are like, they have this ego. And they look, you practiced, you studied, you did this thing for years, and you got good at it. You don't have the right to have an ego about it. And he says, it's like as if it's like saying, hey man, when I was born, I was born with a left foot and a right foot. Woo! He said, that's the kind of comparison he makes to it. It's like you just you should be good at it. You spent years. So that's one thing. The Zen
Yeah.
Mind, Beginner's Mind has one sentence. It says, "Pride is extra."
Ooh.
And when I read that, I thought, whoa. And Zen Mind, it's a thin book, which it should be because it's Zen and it's just kind of like, it's cool. You don't have to just. And because pride and all that. It's like,
It's
man,
not the
you
stuff.
know, no, I'm
Yeah.
just playing. I'm just,
But
and
that
yet,
brings up
go ahead.
the fact that the musician has to be well-rounded enough or sensitive enough or tuned into whoever they're with enough to help bring out what that person wants. It's like you're
If
actually being paid to interpret and
right, right,
help that person think through what they
right,
need, right?
right.
It's not
I mean
about
that.
all your chops, it's about
Sure,
interpretation skills and how do we make this the most musical thing we can.
sure. I mean
Yeah,
that's the gig, and
that's
I've
fascinating.
seen I've seen people who don't have that attitude, and it gets nasty, and it's like, oh, come on, man. It's like, leave it at the door, you know.
Right. Well, that was a thing I had heard when the session for We Are the World happened. Quincy Jones had a giant sign
uh,
for everybody walking through the door, and it said, "Leave your egos at the
at
door."
the door.
And
Sure, sure.
it sounded commanding and mean. And he has a bit of a hard streak anyway. But if it
Hmm.
was already like by invitation for each person, we already love you. You're great. Please
Right,
come and
right.
have fun with us. That would have been a nicer way to say, you don't have to be a
Interesting.
jerk right now.
Right,
You're already in,
right,
like you
right.
don't have to
Interesting, interesting.
lord it over us or
Right,
prove anything to us. You're not auditioning. It's not a test. And I
right,
think
right, right.
that's what happens with players, even with performance, is that they always think it's a test. And it's like, no, I mean, most of these people, if they've come to your show, whether
Hmm.
they've paid or not, they're wanting to be taken on a trip somewhere. Like, please entertain me and take me out of my own head
Sure,
and
sure.
give me some kind of an experience tonight. It's not about, let's see if you can cut it and
Right, right, right,
tell me about how bad it was getting here and all that stuff. It's like,
right,
don't complain
right,
to us. Just
right.
give us your best music. And all you have to do is, I love this thing I'm playing. I love the music I'm playing. And here's why. Maybe I can tell you a little story to bring you into how I wrote it or why I picked this song tonight. And
Hmm.
just play it with love. I mean, that's all you've got to do. And we make such a big to do about it, and it's so
Well,
stressful because of, you look at all these blank faces and you realize they just can't see because they're blinded by the stage lights or something, and you're taking your facial cues off these people who are like, big sour face. I used to always look over people's heads and just smile at nobody, pretending somebody in the back liked me so that I didn't
mm,
look like I was mirroring the people that were in front if they were reviewing it or whatever was going on.
oh,
It's like,
sure, sure, sure.
you have to be an actor to get on stage.
Exactly, exactly.
Tell me about this. What do you do?
Mm.
Close my eyes and play.
That's about it. That's about
Yeah.
it. But I did, and it's also about performing in front of people. But I have only one solution for it, and that is if I'm truly concentrating and really, really concentrating, that solves the whole thing. That takes care of all of it. I don't. I mean, I'm just in the music, and I don't. The rest of it, I don't care. It's that's whatever. But and I finally it took years, but I finally got to the point where I can do that, and I even sort of experimented with practicing doing that. So, I mean, you practice by yourself. There's nothing. You just play. But I kind of figured, well,
Mm,
you can probably kind of imagine you're in a situation like that, and so it's concentration. And I know that's all I can tell my students because they get we do the thing and then they have a test. The
mm,
test which is so unnatural. Look, you're not
yeah.
going to be tested anywhere. You're going to go out and play. But I said the only thing I found is total concentration. If it means you have to stare at the music, stare at
Yeah.
the music.
Focus.
Um,
Well,
sometimes I
because,
look away, and that helps too.
oh, that's good. Like the brain doesn't know the difference between something real or imagined. So if you're freaking out, even at home, you can get nervous. Like
Exactly.
I'll always decide what songs am I going to feel like singing and playing at this particular show. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'll work on them for a few weeks and just get them under my fingers again, remember the lyrics, start memorizing the words if there was a newer song that I hadn't ever performed before. And then
Mm.
eventually I start setting up with all my gear and all my pedals if I'm needing those things. And I practice with the exact guitar, with the exact kind of clothes and the layers and the height of the strap. And I
Oh
stand and
boy.
put a microphone on and actually
Oh boy.
practice the distance between the mic and everything. And
Wow.
if
Okay.
there's things I have to do in between, because like those Beatles shows were intense with remembering what sound you needed and 4 different sounds in each song, and they all had to be
Sure, sure.
pre-programmed and all that
Whoa.
stuff. But
Mm.
I would then start imagining being at the venue. And it's
Yep.
like, okay, we're playing in front of 7,000 people tonight. That
Mhm.
is interesting. That's exciting. Or
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
smoke coming out of my ears, even just thinking about it because I get so excited or whatever. I have to
Right.
learn how to play through that adrenaline.
Sure,
And
sure.
if I can imagine the adrenaline and imagine the excitement or who's might be there reviewing us that might scare me a little bit, I can literally start shaking. I can freak out my own nervous system. My knees can start going, my hands can start shaking. And the beautiful thing about it is you practice the first 3 songs to make them bulletproof. That's what James Taylor always says. Make your first 3 songs bulletproof so that no matter what's going on and no matter how much you're shaking, you
Mhm.
know for sure you can get through these tunes. And
Mhm.
that's a fabulous thing, because since your adrenaline is raised, then you learn to practice even though your body is in a heightened state. Because usually
Mhm.
when the brain gets all excited, it checks out, like a like a pinball machine. Tilt, see
Oh,
ya.
you're right, right.
This
Right,
is a little too intense for me. I'll see
right.
you after the show.
Sure, sure.
Where are you going? I need you right now.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, but that's an interesting
Ah,
thing about even anxiety and things that upset us. If you go back in the past or look forward to the future and just think of things that upset you, you're re-upsetting yourself constantly, and your brain
mhm.
goes, "Oh, we're upset," and
Right, right.
your nervous system reacts. So it's you're talking about focus, and what you're thinking about is so important because it's all about focus. All of life is about focus. It's just crazy.
Well,
You just get more and more of whatever you're focusing on.
it's like everything else. I mean, once you start to be able to do that, you get better and better at doing it. And if you're allowed to, if you keep doing it, if you have the opportunity to keep doing it and keep doing it, that's what, finally now I can do this thing. And you can actually kind of turn it on or, you know,
Mm.
um,
Are you playing mostly acoustic on stage, or are you using transducers and amplified? Or
oh,
okay,
it's
so
all
then
acoustic
all
pretty
you
much.
have to adjust to with each new place is this is how I sound in this venue right now, and the rehearsals sound different than the show because the body's
Oh
absorbing
God.
sound. And
Oh, the sound is such that's the whole thing, man. It's like, can't hear my sound. All right, we did the
can't make a
rehearsal.
sound if you
This is,
can't hear yourself. Yeah,
you know, I and at this point, if I play with you know live musicians or whatever,
yeah,
the volume of a typical thing is so far beyond anything. Hey, man, I'm playing flute. You see this flute? I
right.
can go this far, and that's it. I've done gigs where I'm, and I can't stand playing flute into a microphone. I just cannot stand it because you
Oh,
have a monitor, okay?
yeah.
So I can't hear myself. Turn up the monitor. Well, what if the band plays softer? How's that for a concept? What? No, it's not going to happen. And so you just keep turning it up and turning. And so I go like this, and what comes of it? It's like, you can't do it. Yeah, I can't do it. Some guys, some not guys, people can do it, I'm sure, because they're so
Yeah,
used to it. I'm
yeah.
so used to it too. I cannot stand. I actually can't stand playing into microphones and using monitors and all that stuff. I'm
That's
used to it. The
interesting.
first gigs I ever did, I was already using microphones and monitors. But
Yeah.
I've done gigs on flute where we're in the middle of a tune and I'm trying to play, and I just back away from the microphone, and sometimes I'll turn back to the drummer. It's like, do you understand what this means? This means I can't hear myself. Maybe you could play a little song. I
Uh,
mean, it's
yeah. I
for
just,
woodwind players, it's insane, I think.
wow. It's the
But
same for
again,
singers.
everybody's, yeah. I mean, singers, man. I mean, you this is it. If you turn what happens when you turn the monitor up is you sing louder. You don't sing softer because you can hear yourself. This is my concept anyway. The
Hmm.
whole thing is it's so huge that you got to sing. You can't just go, oh, I can't hear it. No, no. So that's
Hmm.
such a,
Yeah,
again, if we get started on that, it goes on forever. But yeah,
it does. And
my,
stage volume is just a crazy
oh,
thing.
it's totally,
I don't like it.
it's nuts. So I'm like, okay.
And it's
And
confusing, like I don't usually like the sound of the room. It's like when I want to
ah,
hear live music, I just want to hear the music. I don't want to hear
sure,
the
sure,
room, and I don't want to hear the people around me. Like one time I
right.
heard George Winston at the Boston Symphony and
Hmm.
at Symphony Hall, and he was in a smaller room, just an acoustic piano, not amplified. And you would
Uh-huh.
think, oh, this is intimate, this is fantastic. But
Mm,
even though I was in the fifth row,
mm,
the people were sneezing and coughing around me louder than I could hear him play in his softer passages. It
right.
was it was
Yeah,
very annoying to be
sure,
hearing people
sure.
breathing louder than he was playing. It's like,
That's wild.
this isn't what I want either.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I come from an acoustic jazz, with a
Mm,
microphone. Make them. They have to. That's gone. I mean, symphony orchestras and classical music.
mm,
I guess it's acoustic, so people actually have to listen. Um, Other than that, when you have a PA system, it's so yeah, dealing with all that. One thing I wanted to mention, because this again is about nerves and all that stuff.
yeah.
So for what I've been through with all this other stuff, I was diagnosed about 15 years ago with dystonia. So it started in my thumbs, and but I managed to deal with it, and it's cool. The
Mm,
problem is the physical thing was dystonia, but what happens is you get to the point where you can't control like you used to. So you lose that kind of control, at least until you figure out what to do again, which is what I did. So that's one aspect. The real aspect, though, is it creates this panic, this anxiety, this fear. And
yeah,
what I wanted to mention how I dealt with that, because um, that
that's
would probably be useful to somebody.
yeah.
So
Please
what
do.
happened was I was I had to figure out how to play all over again, how to hold the instruments and how to deal with all this stuff. So one day I was just watching TV, and I saw this, and I was afraid, man. I was afraid all the time, like 24. Well, how if I was awake, I thought, I'm over. It's over. I'm finished. What am I going to do?
Mm,
And so I was watching TV, and there was a story about this. I guess it's a kid's book. It's probably not a coloring book, but a picture book, and it was written for kids whose parents were diagnosed with cancer, and to help the kids deal with this situation. And what it was um,
mm,
they had in the book, the kid imagines the problem is the fear is you make it, you make the fear. Hey, being on a roller coaster is unbelievably scary. That's real fear. But
right, right.
all this other stuff, you make it, and you can either go this far or this far. So if fear was an actual tangible thing, you could
Mm,
fight it, you could try to, so what they did was they had the kid imagine this fear as a character, and usually like a bad, some kind of a
nemesis.
uh, yeah, with horns or whatever, the whole thing. And so the kid would imagine fighting the character and beat it up and that whole thing. And I saw that, and it just went boop. So I decided that, yeah, this thing with my hands is, oh man, but the fear of the thing, and I almost had stage fright, and I mean, I would literally, you hear the stories. I've got 7 bars, and I'm going boom, 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 and the sweat is coming down. I got to play this note in 6 bars. I got to play it in 5, and
Hmm.
all of those things, man. And it was like, but I managed to get through it okay, and just barely. So I decided
Wow.
that, well, here's this fear thing. I'm going to make an image in my mind. That's the fear. So I made an image. If you want to know what the image was, it was a huge uh, black iron SpongeBob.
Nice.
Huge, like as far as I could see. A big wall, basically. I say SpongeBob, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
And what happened was I started to imagine kicking it, attacking it with knives, attacking it with bazookas, with tanks, with anything.
Wow.
And nothing worked. I was still, and
Wow.
one day, literally, one day I was, bang, and I noticed there was a little dent in the thing. And I know it's nuts, but from that day, I started to more and more, the thing would start to crumble a little bit. I kind of, fire at it with a gun or whatever. And as that started to, it started to, affect it, my fear also started to
Diminish.
It worked. It actually worked.
That's so cool.
That's it. That's because I saw that thing on TV about that kid's book.
That's so great.
Yeah,
whatever makes the connection, whatever helps. But that goes back to the focus and like
exactly.
focusing on the wrong thing, right? Yeah.
Man, all I could focus on was
Yeah.
So dealing with the physical thing is one thing. Dealing with the mental thing is the whole thing. That's what it became. So
yeah, I think the mental thing is the whole thing on earth.
It is. It is. Well, it is. It is. Your attitude.
Yeah.
It's just your attitude. That's all.
Yeah. Well, you have
a choice.
You have a giant, great sense of humor and stuff too. So I know sometimes in any particular situation, it might not be appropriate to be making jokes about stuff, but in your own head, I think it's good to keep ourselves sane and to just be laughing because everything is made up. Life is just this gigantic game and it's completely made up. So it's like so much of it really doesn't matter that much. If you can like put some of these performance things, especially in perspective. I mean, not like death, of course, those are pretty serious things, but
but older people understand that they've been through it, and it's like, all that stuff it's really nothing. It's not that important.
Yes, older people will say
that. They know.
Sooner.
There's not that enough time for nonsense anymore. It's just,
I
so
heard this thing yesterday where there was like, there are things that just are. So it's like, it is what it is. Whatever it is just a neutral thing. What you think about it is the power you give it, whether you say it's positive or negative. And so your job as a focusing human being is to look at everything and try to find something good about it. If you have to be in a situation, what can you learn from it, or what kind of fun thing can you enjoy while you're there, or take home with it? Take in the good, attach it to something you've always wanted to learn, because we're always teaching ourselves everything. No matter how good the teacher is, you still have to attach whatever they're saying to something you already understand. Otherwise, it's hard to move forward. And then the rest of it, you can't necessarily deem as negative or bad or anything else. You almost have to just let it go and let it be something that doesn't affect you. Like you just have grace about it, or you have forgiveness about it. Like just, it's not yours. You don't even have to worry about it. Just let go of the excess. And that's in itself is a ton of work. But it's really healthy work.
Connecting that to jazz, Hal Crook.
Yes.
So he wrote a couple of books.
How to Improvise. Really,
that's one. There's another one called something like Ready, Aim, Play, or something like that.
Wow.
And he talks about the zone, and it's a wonderful paragraph. It's just, and basically, how talking about what it's like to be in the zone, how to get into the zone, and he says, imagine, when you play, when you're improvising, there's all from the beginning. There's this whole thing of it's good or it's bad. It's good or bad. You're already, from the people are judging it. You're judging it while you're playing. You're going, that was good. Oh, that sucked. Oh, that was good. And he said, they go together. The good goes with yin yang. It goes with it. He said, if you can get to the place where, look, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just it. And the way he talks about it was just right on the thing, man. It's like,
Yes.
you don't have to worry about whether it was good, whether it was bad. Just, and he says something, look, I'm not that, hey, God, thank you. It came from, you know, you don't have to go that far. It's just, that's what it is. And he's right, especially, you know, because we teach jazz. So right from the beginning, that's a good note, that's a bad note. Right from the beginning, man, there's that element of judging the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and I use that to some extent, not even about improvising, just about, because I mean, it became such a thing. It's like, all right, I got to play this note in a few measures and I'm panicked, but wait.
Mm.
Doesn't matter whether it's good, doesn't matter whether it's bad. It's not really my, that's what it almost becomes religion, but a religious thing, but it's not really my thing. It's kind of coming through me. You know, that's like a standard kind of stereotypical, well, I feel like the music is playing me. I'm not playing, you know, that kind of thing. It's,
Yeah,
which is okay.
kind of
It's okay.
ego too. You know, it's like
Yeah. You know.
sometimes the more humility somebody has, it feels false. You know,
Oh,
it's like you've worked at this forever. You should have some pride in it, but not to the point of making somebody else feel smaller. That's all. You know, you want to
sure,
stand tall, but just don't step on everybody else around you. Think
sure.
you're like some people walk around like I'm the shit. You know, like
I know. Well, that's, you know, and that's one of the biggest problems I've always had with jazz is that's such a fundamental, it can be such a fundamental part of it. At least it was, boy, for a long time. I'm sure absolutely, it's much, much better now. But I mean, you know, it came out of such a crazy
well, it had a lot of
place.
hierarchy. It was like jazz is the epitome of the best music, is what.
It's, and it's our club, man. It's
Yeah,
our
and you're
club.
not in it,
And
and
you're
you
not
never
in it,
will
man.
be, and
Man,
everything else under it is
oh
watered
God.
down.
I used to hate,
Yeah,
like your first year, you know, at Berkeley or second year, it's like, all right, man, or even my first year in New York. All right, play.
yeah,
If you can play, you're in the club. You can be our friend. If you can't play, forget it.
yeah,
Hey, some of my best friends can't play jazz at all. I don't, I couldn't care less if they can play well or whatever. And
yeah,
that used to piss me off so much, man, that whole club thing. And in
yeah.
Japan, same thing. It's the same thing,
Really,
man. It's
I
like,
think humans are the same everywhere.
it's the same, you know.
Well, that's why I
And
think it comes back to really what do you love? You know, like when I met friends who loved jazz, I would
mhm.
actually ask them, okay, tell me what you love about jazz, because all I was getting was the opposition and the you're not in it because you're a pop rock person, and you're really
Right.
not in it because you're a woman, and you're really not in it because
Oh
you're
God,
Beatles. And I just thought, wow. And then even
sure.
being told like guitar wasn't my instrument because I'm a woman, it was like I knew
Really?
my instrument because I had been playing it since I was 9 years old. But Mike
Jesus.
Matheny was teaching there when I was a
Ah,
student. And he was telling
okay.
his female students, don't play trumpet because you don't have the right kind of lips. And I was like, oh my God. And people were actually switching instruments, instruments that they had played since they were young kids, just because their college teacher told them they
Shame
don't.
on
They,
you.
yeah, and I just thought
Yeah,
this is really awful. You know, it's really more about what you love and what you want to do with it, and
sure.
how can you help this person as a teacher? How can I help them move forward into more of what they're needing and get them through their requirements? That's
Sure,
all. It's
sure,
not about my
sure.
opinions of what they do or don't do or what they should be doing, other than if they're asking for help because you can see this finger doesn't work and that hand is
Right,
out of
right,
coordination with this hand. I
right.
mean, for
Sure,
guitar
sure.
players, it's like the left hand always gets, not the left hand, but the fretting hand always gets ahead of their picking hand. And if
Okay.
they can't skip strings with a pick or can't alternate
Sure, sure,
fingers, they really can't play the instrument well.
sure, sure,
You have to work on some physical aspects of it, you know.
sure,
But
sure, sure.
the whole mind game thing, wow, it's
Well,
a
you know,
different college now. You
oh,
know,
sure,
all
sure.
the harassment stuff and the Me Too movement and everything has just swept through
Oh
everywhere.
man,
Everything.
it's, you know,
It's good in a way.
well, over the last 30 to 40 years, certainly 30 years ago, there were no women. I mean, there were reed players or brass players, almost none. And well, from the viewpoint of somebody who's been involved with jazz, it went from a zero woman thing to now, oh yeah, Okay, come on. Yeah, chicks can't play. What's that? I mean, I saw all that shit for all those years. Can I swear, by the way? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Good. And I sat there and watched that for years, and and being in Japan, Japan is like, in terms of that stuff, there's so many brass players who are women now in Japan. It's great, and they're beautiful players, and it's all changed over the last 30 or 40 years.
Mm.
But the role of women in Japan for me, if I was a woman, I probably wouldn't be able to stay here that long. I don't think I could take it because it's
Wow.
so far behind. I mean, the
Still,
government thing. Oh God,
yeah.
business. It's still way. It's
What about all the,
um,
the the smoke? Everybody's smoking. Isn't there
that's way better. Way, way, way better.
than when
Yeah.
you first got there?
Oh God, yeah. When I first got here, people used to smoke in the studios,
Oh
which is
yeah.
probably what they used to do in the States too, I
Well,
suppose.
they used to smoke in the halls at Berkeley and in the classrooms when we were students. I used to
Oh,
pick teachers who didn't smoke specifically.
so
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So in terms of that one little slice of it, the jazz perspective, but it's like I don't know how to say this without it sounding completely. Uh,
well, say
okay,
it, and then we'll
this is
change
what I tell people here. I don't like guys.
it.
In fact, this is. I have a running joke here. I've had it for actually even one in the States. You ready? I am the world's only male lesbian. What? What? Well, look, I'm a male. Last time I checked, I'm a guy. I like women. I don't like guys. Okay, I'm the world's only male lesbian. Anyway, stupidity. But I mean,
No, but that's probably what makes you such a great musician, is that you have this sensitivity and a ability to perceive what's going on everywhere and know this isn't cool. So you probably have stood up for a lot of women over the years, which,
they weren't there.
especially
That's
thank
the
you.
whole problem.
Oh,
There weren't any women there.
they wouldn't even let them in.
I mean, it's like and I
Wow.
can't imagine what women have gone through just to get to the point where they can hold their own, play in a jazz group, and
Mhm.
finally,
Well, it's
without
the same
bullshit.
if it's a woman in the studio or if it's a woman in a band or if it's
Exactly,
a woman teacher.
exactly.
I was the only woman in the guitar department for 6 years. They had never had a woman in the guitar department for a while. And it was a boys' club.
My
It really
God, it must have been unbelievable.
Yeah. And the
And you
conversations
remember Margie? Oh,
weird. Yeah.
sorry.
It was insane.
Yeah, yeah. So that took a serious amount of
The
will, courage, whatever you want to call it. But
jokes,
good for you.
but yeah, I mean, there was lots of reasons to be she doesn't count in any way,
Oh,
shape, or form, but it was like I knew I was good. I liked what I liked and I was gonna do what
sure,
I did
sure.
and I'm still there.
Yeah, I knew. I mean, when we started teaching, I saw. Oh yeah, yeah. You're going. I mean, I think I wrote to you in the mail when I was a student there in the early '70s. There were like five women, I think, maybe three to five
Yeah.
women. It just wasn't the thing. I mean, to
No.
go in. I mean, it took some. You really wanted. You really want to have to do that to go in the middle of that situation and deal with all of them.
Right.
Wow.
Well, I
And
remember,
it's not.
yeah, part of the get the word out was it's a safer place to be now, like to tell women it's safe to come to Berkeley now. That
Uh,
was part of the marketing at a certain
uh,
point when I was a new teacher. Yeah.
yeah, man.
It's
And
great.
that's just okay, jazz music. But I mean, it's
Hmm.
with what's going on in the world, with the violence against women, and not to mention the hatred against anybody who's not, shall I say, a white guy. I mean, it's like, wow,
It's crazy.
it's a
And
world war going on all
all
over
the
the
time.
world, man. It's anyway. I'm sorry, I
And it's
didn't really
always
want to
been that way,
go
which
there,
is
but
unfortunate. Yeah. It keeps uh, do you remember anything about the song or about what you were going to play or the experience of the us working together?
I remember, like I said, being at your place, and it definitely was fun. I don't remember.
It was a
I
condo
must
in
have.
Queens. Yeah, I loved what you
Yeah,
played.
yeah.
I thought it was super cool.
What? So did I play on one or two or how?
One. Yeah, it was a song
One.
called
What's
Sad Stranger. It closed the CD. It was my first album.
okay? I'll
Among
check it out. I'll check it out.
Among the
I mean,
Ruins by Too True.
Among the Ruins. Sure, sure,
Yeah, yeah.
sure. And
It was a blast.
um, that was when I was first starting to, I suppose, do some studio type stuff, and I
Freelance.
was just hungry to do anything like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, there were a couple of guys from Harvard who had a little studio down on Newbury Street, and that was my first real experience with studios. And it was so funny because it was what we were talking about. It was the classic. I mean, they're doing commercials, and the clients would come in, and they had no idea. Okay, do something. Do something. All right. So I would do something. That was good over there. Can you do that again? I don't know. I don't know what I just did. I mean, it taught me everything about studio work at the lowest level. It was so funny.
Oh,
It
wow.
was so fun. Try that again. Can you do that? Can you do that? You tried it? It's like, I don't even know what I played, man. It's like, but because it wasn't the music for them. It's not music. It was something that was supposed to function to maybe go, and make somebody like the product.
Oh,
That's what it was.
was it
Those
playing
gigs
on
were not,
jingles?
it wasn't music. Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing.
Ah,
Had nothing to do with music. It was just don't get in the way, but do something that's kind of neat. The clarinet player I fell in love with was this guy named Harold Wright, who was the principal clarinetist with the BSO from about, actually it would have been the early 70s to 92. He died in 90. He was still around 70. He was pretty young. And I went to see him a few times. Didn't know anything about classical music or clarinet or anything, but I heard this sound, and it was like the woodwinds all would kind of collect around his sound, and that became the model for me. And every time I hear his sound, I get goosebumps.
wow.
And when I play anything, as soon as I told my students, about jazz, my improvising doesn't actually come from what I know. It comes from the first sound I make, and then it goes from there. And that's because that's what it is for me. It's first of all, it's the sound. So if I play a nice sound on flute, oh man, saxophone, yeah, clarinet, it's it's not love, it's addiction. It's addiction.
Well,
Because
that's
I
a
know
fascination and a love.
absolute. It's
Yeah, yeah.
when I listen to Harold Wright, the way I feel must be what a junkie feels. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, well, it gets the serotonin going. That's exactly what
Right,
we're
right,
after.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't care what music. I don't care about the gig. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You know,
You
it's
alluded,
it's all one thing for me. It's just
that's great. Because you
you know.
alluded to that before. I mean, there's the physical stuff that we were talking about. There's the
Mhm.
ability, there's the notes, there's the rhythms, there's everything there is to learn. But it's
Right,
when it turns into magic. It's when it turns into
right, right,
freedom, when it turns into
right,
self-expression, when it's actually
right.
being sung through the horn, sung through the flute, sung through the guitar. There's a place where it just goes off onto its own thing, and it's got
Sure,
its
sure,
heartbeat and its own breath.
sure.
It's like, what is that? That's the
Right.
magic side of music that we all aspire to. And if you can just be at your highest level and not full of your own hangups, you can actually express that. And then that's what other people feel. Like Pat Metheny puts himself in the audience. He plays to himself. He's trying to impress himself,
Sure,
you know.
sure,
So
sure.
like
That's got
the
that
trick
was quite.
question where they say, "Who's your favorite player?" And then people go, "Oh no, you should say it's yourself." But for me on guitar, it is myself. I love George Harrison's touch. I love James Taylor's touch, but I love what the
James Taylor, man.
players did for me. I love what they're
Sure,
playing did for my.
sure, sure. James Taylor. You know the song. Oh God, James, Frozen Man.
Yeah, you like that one? Woo!
Goosebumps. Just talking about it, goosebumps. I love. There's so much. I mean, my God, I love all that stuff. All of it. Unfortunately, James Taylor isn't really much known here because lyrics. I mean, if you don't understand the lyrics, yeah, the music is unbelievably beautiful, but
They
the
don't.
lyrics are such a big part of it.
Really? Because I thought a lot of people in all kinds of countries learned English listening to the Beatles. So they were listening to lyrics.
Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Yeah, they were huge here. Queen, as it turns out, the first country that fell in love with Queen was Japan.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that until fairly recently. They came here and did a tour and absolutely went mental for them.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty cool. What do you think? Was there any reason, a detailed?
I suppose you could say that they were so far on the other side from where the typical Japanese person was that they just, wow, this is incredible. I mean, and I suppose in the same way the Beatles were too. I mean, here's American kids going, what is it? With the hairstyle and all thing. And Queen was even much further out than that.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's one of those, some things get across right away, some things don't sell at all. And so James Taylor, man, I would love to meet, well, I mean, everybody, this is me. I'd love to meet James Taylor and just say, yeah, man, thank you. From the beginning, from Mudslide Slim, all of it, man.
I've met him probably 6 or 7 times. Each time he thinks it's the first time, but he asks me questions every time he sees me. When he realizes I'm a professor, he goes, "Hey, what should I do on my website? And what kind of tip should I give them this time?" And all this stuff. And I give him ideas. And
that's funny.
The fun tip was he showed us how to do his nail wraps because
I saw that.
His own built-in picks. Yeah, that was I asked him to do it.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. And it's really cool. He's got the 3 layers and all that stuff. Yeah, he's awesome. And he says that it doesn't ever wear off. He loves hearing, and it matters to him to hear from folks that his music means something to them. So every time I see him, I'm like, because
man,
I heard of him when I was 14. And he only had 3 albums out, and I bought all 3 albums at once. I heard the first song I ever heard was Mudslide Slim, and it just blew my mind. I was like, "Who is this?" I bought all the albums, and then I bought every studio album since, and it was like, never lets you down because he's just the epitome of fantastic.
He has so much, Walking Man. Walking Man for me was like, oh, now we're going. This is Fire and Rain. That's the same guy. Oh. I could talk for hours about that too, and Shower the People, and then he started getting funky, and I mean, he has all of it, man, all of it. So,
do you know that one Love Songs on the Gorilla album that starts with a clarinet, big clarinet?
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah.
Let's do something like that.
Hey, anything you want. I mean, I'm ready.
I know. I've always wanted to do a song like that because of that song. That's a good one. I'm glad you're into recording parts now.
Absolutely. Anything. I mean, awesome. Jesus, I have a friend from England who I've actually never met. We've never Skyped, but I met him somehow through the internet, and I've done a couple of things.
That's cool.
Just crappy, MP3, send it to him and he sticks it in there with GarageBand, so it's cool.
Well, yeah, if you render it and bounce it out as a WAV file, it'll be a little higher quality, and then I can put it right in an actual record.
Yeah, I mean, send me something, then I'll.
Do you ever do like 3 or 4 parts of yourself?
That I haven't done, actually.
If you were the whole sax section on a song of mine, or if you were a flute section?
Flute section would be possible. Sax section, because I live in this country called Japan, if I played saxophone that much, I'd probably get some complaints from the neighbors.
Oh.
I mean, really. I mean, this is my wall of shame over here. It's just a little rabbit hutch apartment, and it's cool. I don't need anything, but it's the walls are thin, and so I practice flute a lot here, but not.
So is there a practice room you go for sax?
No, I don't practice saxophone.
You just go outside?
I practiced saxophone from 1975 to about 1979, about 5 hours a day, because I was at Boston University School of Music studying classical saxophone. What? Because when I graduated from Berkeley, I just was like, nah, I'm not quite ready. What should I do? I'll go study technique, the classical thing. So I went to BU, which was
Wow.
one of the best things I ever did. And so and when I was at Berkeley, I never practiced much. I didn't practice on the weekends. I just,
Oh,
so for about 3 years, I practiced about 4 or 5 hours a day. And from that time, I hadn't much practiced the saxophone.
no, that's
My,
fine.
I tell everybody here, the saxophone is so easy, even a dog can play it. That's my standard phrase here. It is. It's so easy. It's silly. That's why everybody and his mother plays it, man. There's a million sax players out there. They're all over YouTube. And oh, man, there's so many horrible ones.
Oh yeah,
It's
like horrible guitar
easy.
players, dime a dozen.
Oh, my God. But on saxophone, as soon as you boot, at least guitar, you might have a shot at getting out a few chords or a note. Saxophone, oh, Jesus.
I know the tone is usually absolutely awful. In fact,
It's
most of
awful.
the time I don't like the sound of an alto sax unless it's
Oh, I don't either.
Adderley.
Cannonball, sure, sure.
You?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
look, it went from nobody doing it to everybody doing it. And one of the reasons is because it's so simple.
really.
It's just a recorder with keys. It's the same, it's nothing. It looks really complicated, but
Huh.
Adolf Sachs put the keys on it to make it simple. It was for a marching band kind of a thing.
Okay.
So it's so simple. I mean, my God,
I
you can learn it in
like the
30
sound
minutes.
of the keys just flapping.
Yeah, sure.
That's a cool sound.
It's simple. That's the big secret. But the only thing that's difficult about the saxophone is getting a nice sound. That's all. And the pitch. The actual thing itself is so. That's the big secret that all sax players know. Now you all know it now. It's simple.
Well, that
It's
explains
so
why there's so
simple.
many bad sounding alto sax players.
My God.
That's the key to playing it well. Well, it could be the same with guitar in a sense then. Getting a really good sound is key. And what's good, that's all up for interpretation too.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's exploded, man. Well, I
Since
mean,
Bill
it's
Clinton.
gone the way it should go. It was going to go that way. So, and during the 60s and 50s, there was always a sax solo.
Yeah.
It used to be
Stan
tenor
Getz.
solos. Then it's
Stan Getz.
even on Motown and all those, man, so many
Right.
sax solos, and I listened to them. They were great.
Right.
Junior Walker and all those people. And
Yeah.
then Sanborn came along, and then it changed over to alto, and so the pop thing and smooth jazz and all that. So this of course it went that way because that's the way it was going to go. I mean, talking about, you like to say that's what it is. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the way it was going to go. What do you mean? Gee, I can't remember. Why did it go that way? Why did it go that? Because that's the way it was going to go. Gee, really? Yeah. I mean, come on.
Well, what would
So
you say takes the most creativity in all the things that you do? Because I think every human has all these creative chops and abilities. And what are we all using it for? Like, even in our daily life, whether we're cooking or setting up the place where you live, or, it takes creativity to do everything.
the create. If you ask me what my goal is to play flute and to make somebody cry. That's basically it. The sax I love, it's my thing, but flute for me is the whole thing really. And to try to get a beautiful sound now after all these years, I finally, for the first time in my life, starting to think, I'm getting closer because I never studied classical flute. Most doublers don't. Well, maybe they do now. I don't know. Anyway, creativity. It's not. It's just my job.
Trying to reach somebody, trying to connect with what you're playing.
Well, again, this is going to sound, I've been trying to explain this for years, but I don't feel like a musician. I don't feel like a doubler. It finally came to me that I don't, that's not negative. I'm not saying, I don't feel like it. Yeah, I suck. It's nothing like that. I'm a guy who likes to make different sounds on different instruments, and I happen to like this thing called music, and I like jazz, and I love jazz. I love classic music. I love acoustic guitars, bluegrass. I love as much as different music as I hear. but I don't think of myself as a musician, and I don't know really how to explain that. If I see a if I see somebody who I admire, a double or a sax player, I go, "Wow, that guy's." I think that's a musician. He's great. If I see a picture of myself playing, I think, "Oh, that looks like one of those guys who plays an instrument." I actually don't. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it. I don't.
You're in it. You can't really see it
I
outside.
guess is what it is. It's just what I do. I mean, the classic stereotype. They'll interview somebody like maybe the Donald Fagen, and they'll say, "Man, Steely Dan was so great," and he'll come back with Steely Dan. Yeah, oh yeah, and the critics are like, what are you talking about? Yeah, man, I did that 20 years ago. I mean, I've gone on from then. It kind of feels slightly like that, but
Yeah.
it's just what I do. I don't need to take credit for it. I don't need to have an ego or pride about it. I do it for myself, really, in the end, although I would like to make somebody cry. That would be nice. That would probably be a nice,
Yeah.
oh man, your flute is so beautiful. Because that's how I feel when I listen to Howard Wright. I mean, I feel like crying. It was like, and nobody else sounds like that. And his kindness is what comes through for me more than anything.
How do you spell his last name?
Wright, Wright.
Al Wright.
Harold Wright. If you listen to him and you listen to other people, he just had a very special thing inside in the center of his sound, and the way he played that nobody else has for me.
That's
But
got to be
that's a specific classic clarinet thing.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows Harold Wright will go, oh yeah, oh Harold, special guy.
Love or magic in there.
And I heard an interview with him once, and his thing was he comes in from nowhere, and he starts a note, and so that's one of his specialties, right? So the interviewer says, it's so beautiful the way you come out of nowhere and you play that. And he says, oh well, actually that's really easy to do on the clarinet. It's like, oh,
he's always fading.
Oh, dude.
Well,
Really?
that sounds a lot like intention. What do you think his intention is? What is your intention after loving what he does? What are you thinking about when you go to play the clarinet like he plays it?
It's connected to the concentration thing.
Yeah, of making a sound.
The concentration thing is about singing in my mind when I'm playing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And when I'm singing, whether I'm improvising or playing this line, this melody, whatever, that's 100% concentration. When I'm not singing, I'm not concentrating enough. And I finally realized that that's what it is.
Well, they try to tell that to guitar players too. It's like, hear something in your head first and go find it. Don't let your fingers wander through everything they know, because all they know are all the scales they've practiced.
Exactly.
Some of the licks. And that's why Mick Goodrick said, well, you're just playing your beef stew now. You're not singing something and hearing something to create a new something with all that stuff.
Mick, he died, last year or last couple of years? Mick Goodrick?
Yeah, maybe even just a couple months ago.
Yeah, I did 2 gigs with him.
Wow.
Me, him, and a bass player up in New Hampshire, this woman bass player. I got the gig because I could drive.
I had a car. Did you have to go pick him up? Because
I picked him up. We went up to the gig.
Yeah. He didn't have a car.
Speaking of humor, man, he loved jokes. Absolutely loved jokes. Yeah, Mick. The first time I saw him play was probably with Gary's band way back, and he had a wah-wah pedal.
Oh wow!
But he didn't go waka 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 waka. He said oh, he said it here, oh, and he played like that. And I thought, that is so hip, man. Yeah. Nobody else ever thought about that. Wah-wah pedal, waka 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 waka. No, he used it as a sound, performed like this would
get a different tone.
That's cool. I totally remember that. And that was way back, probably maybe when I was still a student. in the
Wow.
early 70s, somewhere in that.
You know,
Just to think that way. Go ahead.
that's fun. Jesse Ed Davis played the slide guitar part on the beginning of John Lennon's song and I realized when I had to imitate that for the Afterfab band I was in, it was
Ah, well, mhm, mhm.
I went, oh my God, it's a slide with a wah wah.
Pedal.
Never thought about that when the song came
That's
out
funny.
when I was
See, you
and I
see,
was
that's
playing slide and I had a wah wah in
the
those days. But
sound.
when I had to reproduce it, it was like, what's doing that? Oh my God.
Right.
It's an envelope filter. He must have used a wah wah, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, the Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore East or West. What is it, East?
Right.
Dwayne Allman. When Brecker came to Berkeley and did a master class, he was talking. They asked him about his influences, and he said, I got a lot of things from listening to guitar. And I thought, yeah, I know, because
He's very
he
dark.
had just right
Yeah.
from guitar.
Yeah.
So Dwayne, man, I love Dwayne's playing.
Did you?
Christ. I listened to that album so much, man. And Idlewild South, I think, was their single album.
So
Yeah, yeah. Guitar, there's so much to learn for a sax player from listening to guitar.
wow. And they tell the
yeah.
guitar players to listen to the horn players.
Well, that's it. I listen to Sinatra listened to Tom. It's all, it's just all the same thing. They
Whatever.
tell classical, right. They tell classical flute players to listen to violins because that's, that's what it is. And yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Super. Great.
So
So what do you love about teaching or do you still teach? Are you in a college?
I just
private?
because I was teaching for the last 25 years at a college, but
Yeah.
because I turned 70, they said bye-bye, which is so silly because I'm at the peak, man. I play the best I've ever played. I love teaching. I've got a life of experience. You're finished. So I love teaching. It's just a natural.
Do you give private lessons online now?
I haven't. I don't know if I will. Again, I'd have to find a place to do it. So.
Oh, right.
I want to. And this is another thing. And again, it's not ego. I'm the only guy in this country who, with my education, with my experience, with the classical thing, with all of that, to give to Japanese sax players. I sincerely would love to keep on teaching, and because that's about 30 or 40 years behind in a lot of ways too. But
yeah, well, I'm sure you could. You just need to find a space, like you say, to make some.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. Yeah, can I say something to sax teachers out there? Any sax teachers?
Any sax?
I'll tell you something. I've watched. There's a million videos on YouTube about people teaching how to do this and how to do that. There's so much bullshit. It's unbelievable. And I'll tell you specifically. This goes to the sax player. See, now I'm going to offend more people, and I'm going to get so much bad stuff. But it doesn't matter. I'm in Japan. They can't touch me. Anyway, so vibrato on the saxophone. Yeah. This is how they teach vibrato. They go like, okay, you go like this. There endeth the lesson. Pay me. Not one of them says anything about how you use your air when you use vibrato. Not one of them says anything about the fact that your tongue is moving inside your mouth when you do vibrato. They just go, and that's it. That pisses me. So here's all these people watching all these videos, and you look at the comments and it says, thank you, you changed my life. Now I know how to do vibrato. No, you don't know how to do vibrato, and it's never going to sound good. So that's part of the age that we're in, Yeah. These people look at the internet and I learned how to play the saxophone. No, you didn't, actually, not by my standards.
No.
And by the way, growing up in Boston, you said something like, you're a product of where you came from and what you listened to and the standards of music in Boston. I mean, my God, the BSO, Berkeley, the whole thing was so high.
Yeah.
And one more thing connected to that. Sorry, I don't know how much longer I can go, but Barbra Streisand, people, Barbra Streisand. So here I am, I don't know, probably about 10, 11 years old. And I hear that. My father was in love with, he used to cry when he heard Barbra. So I hear this and it's like, Oh, unbelievable. It still is. I cry when I hear it. Still is. Okay, that's the way people sing, right? Wrong. Nobody sings like that. Nobody can sing like that even now. That's it. Have you ever heard another version of people? No. Gee, I wonder what. Why? Because who's going to touch it? It's God. I mean, it's
perfect.
so that was my standard. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Those were my standards. And Ella Fitzgerald and live on TV and all these people, man. And so that's what's in here. And so when you ask me about playing, all of that, of course, is a part of it. Even before I could play, that was a part of it. I didn't even know what I was going towards, but that's what it was. More than jazz, more than the saxophone, it was this excellence.
Yes.
And when I was a student at Berklee, man, excellence was what it was about. The whole thing was excellence. And what do I miss? Excellence.
Me too.
I miss that.
There's been so much watering down and allowing anything and allowing anybody to do anything, and it's good enough. And it's like
what it is.
Good enough for jazz, good enough for rock and roll, and it's not. It's not excellent.
And Lauren, that's where we are. That's where we are. By the way, about your name, I figured about your name. Now, I'm just going to take a wild guess, okay? Now, if I offend you, forgive me. What I think, now I have a vision. What I think is your parents, they loved the Lawrence Welk show. So when you were born, they thought, if it's a boy, Lawrence. It's a girl, Lauren. So that's what it is, right? Am I wrong?
My mom's stepmom was named Loretta. So she was trying to throw her a little bone that it was in the family of that name, like Lauren.
So Lawrence Welk doesn't even enter in.
I don't think so. I remember the show. I'm sure they watched it. I remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show every Sunday night.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that was our teacher, man. I mean, Jesus, every week live.
Yes.
God damn, we were so lucky to see that.
I know.
So
unbelievable.
Yeah. I got to play again with Sammy Davis Jr. and Ray Charles, and man,
oh wow,
it was like,
whoa!
What are you going to say? It was great. It was great. And Ray played alto sax. I saw a video recently of him playing. He sounds like Cannonball.
Ray Charles playing alto.
Ray Charles playing alto. Yeah.
Wow.
If you search, you'll probably find it somewhere. I didn't even know. And we're playing, and all of a sudden, I see an alto sax next to him, and his assistant, leads him over, and he starts playing. It's like Cannonball.
Yeah. Okay, now tell us about that. How did that happen? And
when I was teaching at Berklee, these gigs, these Motown gigs, and these gigs that used to come in, they'd hire the guys from Berklee. Some of those, the Four Tops and people like that, man. I used to do some gigs with Garzone. We were doing like the Four Tops and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a ball. It was an absolute ball.
Were they full tours or just a gig here or there?
Just when they come to Boston, they use whoever the local players are. But
yeah. So where did you play?
Could have been actually the Manhatten. What's the I forgot the name of it already.
Berklee
Performance Center. It's possible something like that, or some big venue like that. But
Symphony Hall.
Something. It wasn't symphony, but so it's just a horn section, right? Yeah. The rehearsal is a guy with a cowbell. Their music director, a guy with a cowbell. That's it, and going through each chart, because the charts start and it goes to the end, and so that's what the rehearsal was. And we had our tuxedos on, so the curtains down, and I'll never forget it. And so we start the bass line from one of the songs.
Yeah.
And the curtain starts to go up, and I hear people are screaming, and I'm like freaked out because I don't know what it is. Oh, we're playing the Four Tops, and the curtain's going up, and it's their scream voice. But for a moment, I was like scared because I thought, what, fire? What's going on? I forgot we were playing with the Four Tops or whatever. Anyway, so that was cool. So, and Sammy Davis and
wow,
they were great. They were great gigs. Great gigs.
That's cool. And did you guys get to talk or say anything to each other, or was just there's
No, but Sammy was like really nice to the band, and I had heard that in the older days he wasn't so nice to the band, but
oh
and he had actually a hip replaced, I think. And but he did this thing where he did trading fours or trading eights with the drummer, tap dancing.
oh yeah, yeah.
Oh God, it was silly. It was silly.
He's phenomenal.
So
Yeah. Wow, that's so
so
cool.
that
So
was fun. That was fun.
yeah, you probably have tons of people that you've played with. Tell us some more.
Played with Mel Torme. That was a trip.
Wow.
Mel, actually, he did his own arrangements, which they were great arrangements. I didn't know that.
Oh wow. Yeah, I
Except he
think
was a good.
earlier on there a lot of artists were actually musicians and not just a
Yeah,
face.
yeah, sure, sure.
Who else did you play with?
Oh God, the people who were around, like Andy Williams, all those old singers. But you know,
Yeah.
um, I have played with Manhattan Transfer too. That was actually a ball.
Wow.
Although they were arguing a lot. They were already, burnt out on it. So,
Yeah.
but they were great, man. Oh God,
What
the
kind of
women.
recording sessions have you done? And do you remember any players you played with, or do you wear headphones? How do you set yourself up in the studio?
Oh, you know, I hate playing into microphones.
Yeah.
Actually, the probably the most fun was I did some sessions in New York, and that was a trip. That was because I knew the guy who was the writer or the arranger, and they brought in people like Randy Brecker and all these huge, I was like sitting there playing, at
Mm.
the beginning when I moved there. So
Who was the
uh,
arranger? Was it Richard Niles?
no, it was absolutely that nobody knows. Actually, one of the guys was Bob Mintzer. It was one of his arrangements too. But again, it was like stuff for TV and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
so I was in New York for 4 years, and after that, it was like, nah, I don't think I can do this. And they kept saying, well, if you hang in for 10 years, you. I said, 10 years, man, nah. So I moved back to Boston and started teaching there with you in '84.
Yeah.
So, but it was, before, it's like, man, you got to go to New York. But man, there's so many great players there. It's scary. Yeah, so I went there, and you know what I found out? Yeah, there's a lot of great players, and there's a lot of crummy players too. Oh, so it was cool. It was one of those things where you're scared, so you don't do it. So I did it, and so they say, what's the line?
Yeah.
It's better to have done it and failed than never to have tried at all. That kind of yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's huge too.
People don't realize how many things you need to try and do. And like you were saying, if it's meant to be, it seems like it just flows. Whereas other things just seem to fall flat. But you usually do 200 things that fall flat and 3 things that actually work. And people don't realize that. They don't have any tenacity or stick to itiveness these days to say,
Well,
this is how you try. Like Babe Ruth had the most home runs, but they don't realize that he had the record for the most strikeouts as well.
ah,
Yeah.
good one. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. People.
How about Tim Donahue? Did you know him?
No, I don't think so. I don't
Guitar
think so.
player. He also builds harp guitars. He's in Japan,
No.
but he fell in
Oh,
love and moved to Japan after he graduated from Berkeley.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I thought maybe that happened to
Um,
you. It's like, got to follow
well,
love.
I met my wife while I was teaching at Berkeley. She was in one of my classes, and after she graduated, we started seeing each other. And after teaching there for 7 years, I had a year sabbatical. So I came here, checked it out, got an offer, and moved back, threw everything out, and came back here. I moved here when I was 39, which means that's how I was unhappy, how unhappy I was with the situation that I was in. I mean, I threw everything out and came here from zero. But and again, that sounds like an ego thing. It's not at all. It's just what it
Hmm.
is. So, and it's been good.
But
Every day pretty much. I'm so glad I came here. It's worked out wonderfully.
that's so great. Super
Yeah.
cool.
And it's one of those things where I had the advantage of not knowing. I suppose it was the same thing with like everything going to New York. I didn't know. I didn't know the negative aspect. I mean, oh God, it's going to be. You don't speak Japanese. You don't know anybody. Yeah, I don't. So, but on the other hand, I don't have that wall either. I was I was so naive. I didn't have a wall up, so I just kind of went, and it was cool.
And so now you've learned a lot of Japanese, probably.
I
Konnichiwa.
can speak, sure, konnichiwa. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been good. I heard
Tuned
when
into
I
the
first came
music
over
of
that.
it.
What?
You tuned into the music of it and learned the language.
Sure, because it's about the
Oh yeah,
rhythm of it, the whole thing.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's
I
what
remember
they say. What keeps us from understanding a lot of people who are trying to speak English is their syllables are broken up in different places, and we don't know the rhythm, and it's hard to
right,
follow.
right,
And yeah,
exactly, exactly. So yeah,
could
yeah.
you
So
say something about the sound of the language, or
no, actually, I was going to say when I first came over, I heard that Japan is roughly the size of California,
wow,
and the population is about 150 million.
yeah,
So
that's
it's, you know,
people on top
and
of.
so it's pretty packed, but it's cool
That's
mostly.
awesome.
It's cool mostly. Yeah, it's been good. I mean, it's not for everybody. It's not
Yeah,
heaven. What I found was you trade one country's nonsense for another country's nonsense,
yeah.
and whichever nonsense you can deal with is the one you go with. And for me, the nonsense here is like it's cute. You know,
It's cute.
there's no army. We're not killing people. Excuse me. It's cool.
Oh, that's good.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
a lot less
So
of that. Cool. What didn't we
so
talk about?
in terms of what I do, I made a CD about 22 years ago. That's only my own CD. And that was a ball because I wrote songs for myself, for my own instruments. And that's my only experience with that. And it was, um, that's about as close as I can come to it. The rest of it, it's really just, again, to use the word craft, it's really just trying to play this instrument well and trying
Mm,
to play this instrument well in this one. And
mm,
so that's why if I talk to a jazz player, it's difficult sometimes for them to maybe, or to, it's because my whole thing is the actual instrument and the sound. I don't really care about what I'm playing. It's not
mhm.
Garzon and Jerry Boganzi. They say it's not what you play, it's how you play.
Oh,
I saw
absolutely.
that in two different videos and I thought, man, that was so cool.
Yeah,
And it's pretty much that's it. I really don't care what I'm playing. It's much more how to play that thing and make the sound and that
yeah,
whole thing.
yeah.
So
And so, what kind of good tips can you give for flute or sax to make sound? Clarinet. What kind of things do
there's
you?
only one tip. It's all about your diaphragm. It's all about how you use your air. It doesn't matter what kind of instrument you have, what kind of reed you use, what kind of ligature, mouthpiece. I don't care. And as far as tonguing and vibrato and all of that stuff, if you it all comes from the way you blow, all of it. And
Wow.
my teacher, God bless him, Joe Viola,
Yeah.
not by what he said, but by the way he played, that I finally understood. Because when sax players and teachers, they talk about it, they talk about the mouthpiece, they talk about the instrument, they talk about the reed. And after about 10 seconds of hearing that, there's this little bing, 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 bing. No, actually, it's not about the equipment. It's about how you're blowing into it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's all I know. Usually when I teach a sax student for the first time, I'll tell them, well, this is what I know about playing the saxophone. You have, I'm pointing to my diaphragm now. You have to, it has to come from your diet. You have to use that. And that's all I know. So bye.
And then, is there anything that you tell them for exercises with your diaphragm?
There's things you can do for lying on the floor. If you lie, when you lie on the floor, you breathe naturally through your diaphragm. And so
Okay.
you have to get the trouble is it's easy to breathe in. When you breathe out, I can tell you what Joe Viola said.
Yeah.
Joe told me when you blow out, you have to keep you have to try to keep it. You keep the balloon. Uh, what's the word? I can't think of the word in English. Uh,
Extended.
Extended is exactly what I was going. And that's the hard part. He said it feels like when you are going to the bathroom. Number two, and and if you push down, oh, That's actually what it is. When you push down, your diaphragm goes out.
And so you have to keep your diaphragm out
while you're blowing.
Yeah.
So you keep it extended as much as possible while you're blowing out. Instead, because if you don't, it goes like that, and there's nothing there. Oh, it's actually like a bellows.
It deflates, and you've got to keep it inflated.
So when you bellows, a bellows.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you do this, it doesn't go. It goes because the nozzle is like this, and the air is trying to get through it, but there's pressure, so you go, and it keeps the balloon inside extended. That's what it is. That's probably the best example.
For sax and flute and for
everything, especially flute,
singing.
Especially clarinet. It's all. I mean, I tell my Japanese students here, look, saxophone and flute and clarinet, trumpet, they're all called wind instruments. Why do you think they're called wind instruments? Because it comes from your wind. Okay.
I remember the first time I played flute in an ensemble in junior high school with the whole orchestra. I got so lightheaded.
Oh, that's what happens. Sure, everybody does at the beginning. You get dizzy.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, and it's funny. After a couple of weeks, you get used to it, which is, I don't know why you get used to it. I should check that out sometime.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Awesome. Totally great.
So I don't know if there's more stuff you want to talk about anytime. I mean, I could go on forever, So
yeah.
But,
well, I look forward to digging through some songs and saying these are the ones I should send to Bob, and we can collaborate.
Yeah, however you want to do it, I'm up for it.
That's great. So cool to see you. Thank you so much.
It's great to see you, and it's funny because, as I said, you're frozen. When I got your mail, the times I've got, all these years when I get your mail, my image is the way you look on the Too True album that we did. And so that's what I kept thinking. And then I said, oh, you're doing these podcasts. So I look at the podcast. It's like, and then I'm 70. You're 63?
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, I dye my hair. It doesn't get that great.
But I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible, man.
Well, my beard didn't go gray. That's all.
No.
Can't compare that. Yeah.
It's great to see you, really. It's a trip. It's a trip.
You're the best, Bob. Thanks so much.
Thank you.